Donk Nation, Jackson, Janet's greetings and welcome to your daily dose of Donkey with Ginger. It's some off-season Steelers talk as the Super Bowl happened. Gingy, I know you're here, but Patty Mahomes is that dude, huh?
Gingy in the house, what's up? We are officially in the off season. Yeah, sure looks like it, don't he? Beginning of a dynasty. I think that's what we call it now, right? We're there. We're
Cemented.
there.
They are cemented as a dynasty. Yes, no doubt about it. About to have a chance to do something no team has ever done with a three-peat going into next season. They had a target on their back. They had a roster that wasn't the best. They were missing an all-pro offensive lineman. They were missing Darius Toney, although I think that was intentional. That defense played lights out. Isaiah Pacheco makes one red zone mistake, and it looked like it was going to be costly through the game. Gingy, I told you, don't trust Kyle Shanahan. Do not trust Kyle Shanahan in a Super Bowl. And it came out. I think San Francisco, their defense played stout. I thought their offense was a little subpar, and their coaching, to me, Gingy, was terrible and was the reason they lost.
Ouch. Yeah, I mean, receiving the ball in overtime, given the new rules.
No matter what both teams touch. Yep.
Yeah, no matter what both teams touched. I don't think that was the right position to put either one of the side, offense or defense, in that situation.
Gingy, hear me out on this because we talked about it before the show, and I want you to elaborate what your feelings are on it. But my thought is, Kyle Shanahan says, I wanted to get the ball third. Well, then why the hell did you settle for a field goal? Because you know Patty Mahomes is about to touch the football, and you can't stop him in drives that matter. No one can. The dude's that dude. And second off, do you think for a second Andy Reid doesn't realize that if he scores a touchdown and kicks an extra point and it's a tie game, you would get the ball back? Do you think for a second Andy Reid wouldn't go for two and put the ball in Patty Mahomes' hands with a chance to win the Super Bowl? Come on, Kyle Shanahan. You knew you were never going to get the ball a third time. That is the dumbest explanation I've ever heard, Gingy.
I think that he felt like his defense had that under control. Now I know you say Patty Mahomes, the dude, the guy,
without a doubt. Only did he score a game-winning touchdown in regulation because he had only 6 seconds instead of 7 seconds on the clock after an incomplete pass. Yep.
But yeah, I felt like Kyle Shanahan had faith in his defense, which he had some reason to. They played well throughout that game. I felt like they would have had. I saw Bosa get held a lot, neither here nor there, but I think they placed good pressure on Patrick Mahomes. Really felt like they could have stopped him there, but they didn't. And he's
if we're gonna get into referees, the ineligible 6 yards down the field on the touchdown trick pass to Christian McCaffrey is where you should go first and foremost, because that isn't a subjective call. That is objective, and he objectively was way the hell down the field. I thought at least the officials didn't make a call that ended up being game changing, mostly because the Chiefs won the Super Bowl, but all in all, I guess it wasn't the worst officiated game. But when you get into that game, man, I know Brock Purdy had a great season. I know Brock Purdy's done a lot of things with the Niners there. Those numbers don't lie. Getting to the Super Bowl the year before, getting to the championship game. He's done a great thing with a really stacked roster. But this isn't meant to be mean to him. And you talked about this earlier, Gingy, and I said there's maybe 4 or 5 guys in the NFL that are more than just a guy in terms of a quarterback. And to me, this game, with some of the missed throws he had that were potential to be game-changing, I can't see Brock Purdy as more than just a guy.
Well, he's not the worst guy, and I guess really that's your.
No, he's at that top of the list. He's at that top of the list of just a guy.
If the Niners were to let him go,
like him and Kirk Cousins are holding hands,
okay,
down the street.
That's your standard, Donkey. Yes, because I was going to say if the Niners were to let him go, which I know they're not, he's under a rookie deal for sure. But like if he were to go, away from that team tomorrow, another team would absolutely pursue him. Yes.
Yeah, just like Jimmy Garoppolo. When Jimmy Garoppolo got let go by the Niners after putting up, 9-horrific stats when he was with the Niners, but then the Niners move on to just a guy. Like, I swear to God, Kyle Shanahan just has this just a guy thing because he wants to prove he's the smartest dude in the room. So he doesn't want an elite arm. He wants just a guy. I feel like that's what Kyle Shanahan loves.
See, when I'm thinking of just a guys, I'm thinking of Mitchell Trubisky.
No, that's not a guy. Okay? That's a bag. That's not a jag, Gingy. That's a bag.
Jag. All right, I got it, Donkey.
We're going to do an off-season segment, by the way, now. And it's going to be called Jags versus Nags. And we're going to rate every quarterback in the NFL.
I'm not opposed to it.
Or WAG. I guess it'll be Jag, Nag, or WAG, which is what a guy, right? All right, I got it. That is what we're going to do.
Donkey. You are digging deep now.
I hope you're listening, because you better have rocked up where you're going to stack all these quarterbacks. Oh, my. Okay. But getting into this more, are you surprised the Niners let Steve Wilks go? Because the regulation of that Super Bowl, this is the fourth ranked our defense in terms of points. During that Super Bowl, the only touchdown they gave up is after a unlucky bounce on a punt, which what a changing moment that was. Special teams being special for the Chiefs. So the blocked extra point, but that was on the Niners kicker. You surprised that Wilks gets fired after one season in San Fran, and honestly, a really good one.
I am. Coaching carousel in the NFL is crazy. I don't know how you keep your job if you don't keep it after a season of that caliber. The defense fell pretty much top end of the NFL in all relevant categories.
Yeah, and you look at that secondary, there's not a whole lot of talent in that secondary, so honestly kind of impressive. And let's not forget here, maybe one of the most important parts of the game was Dre Greenlaw tearing his Achilles running onto the field. Like, that's one of the core pieces. And I talked about him in our pregame. He's the guy I could remember. I thought he had a better season than Fred Warner, the guy I couldn't remember the name of last week, who's an absolute stud. I thought he had a better season than Fred Warner. You're talking potentially losing their best player, and he still got that kind of performance against Patrick Mahomes. I mean, Gingy, if that guy can't keep a defensive coordinator job, who the hell can? Sorry, Terrell lost him in Pittsburgh.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Donkey. I understand. Yeah, I don't have anything to say to that. That's a low blow right there on Terrell Austin right out of nowhere, Donkey. But
hey, you remember the Brian Flores getting fired and we bring him in as like a little special coach? Think Steve Wilks would take that same type of deal? Come to Pittsburgh for a little bit?
I doubt he would.
Well, I'd like to see it happen personally. I mean, there are not very many defensive coordinator jobs left open, so just saying, dude wants a job. I got one right here in the Steel City ready for him. But Gingy, to you, what was that Super Bowl play that just, it cemented everything for you? What's the play that sticks out in your head?
I really think it's got to be, ultimately at the end of the game, you see at the block extra point. I was watching the game with my buddy, and I knew that I said that's going to come back at the end of a close game for sure. And I mean, I know that's cliche, but here we are, right? Game going into overtime. It could have been played out much differently with 1 point difference. Sometimes it doesn't matter, Donkey, but not this time. It mattered 1 point.
I think Patty Mahomes throws a touchdown at the end of regulation if he needed 4 points because, Jesus, dude, he's Tom Brady. I'm never going to freaking bet against the Chiefs in the playoffs until they lose, right? That's officially the status he is for me. So I think they would have won anyway. To me, the play that was the Super Bowl is the play of inches where a punt hits one of the gunners in the leg. Ray McLeod's not able to fall on the fumble after it hits his player, and the Chiefs recover because the Chiefs had really been down. It felt like the New England game. It felt like Tom Brady was sitting in the wings. San Francisco felt like they dominated the first half, but they weren't winning, right? They were barely up. And you're like, Man, Patrick Mahomes is about to end half, start half, and things are about to go crazy. That didn't really happen, but then the punt hits the guy. Brock Purdy misses a couple game-changing throws. Patrick Mahomes hits a couple game-changing throws. History will remember the victors. And you're the Niners. You're just there scratching your head again. This is what, the second 10-point lead they blew in a Super Bowl to the Kansas City Chiefs. And if you're Kyle Shanahan, man, you have to wonder if you're just going to call in 6 next time you get to a Super Bowl, right?
Yikes. Yeah, I haven't had good luck so far. With controversy around some of his decision making in
yes,
in
every
both
game.
Instances. Yeah.
In
In
all
both
3
instances.
games.
Yeah.
Of course, the
I
third
agree.
game I'm talking about isn't his other Super Bowl. It's when he was offensive coordinator of Atlanta. And let's not forget how that ended.
Mm-hmm. Nobody does, Donkey.
No. Now let's get into what I thought was the best part. I know Laskers wasn't a huge fan of what Usher did on stage, but man, Usher singing not being on point doesn't mean snot to me because Usher isn't there to sing at the end of the day. Everyone knows that the dude's there to dance, and watching him dance on roller skates, I thought was pretty sweet. Seeing Alicia Keys show up, seeing Little John show up, and I mean Vegas turned down for what, Gingy? Yeah, that's what it had to be, right? Seeing Ludacris show up in some frickin' Ronald McDonald looking boots. Man, I got some 90s, late 90s, early 2000s nostalgia, Gingy. It made me happy. I'm not gonna lie. I thoroughly enjoyed the halftime show.
Cameos were the star for me, Donkey.
Dancing on roller skates was pretty sweet. I also got to learn about a new R&B artist, H.E.R. Her. I had never heard of her before. I had to look up who her was because my wife was like, "Who's that playing the guitar?" And I'm like, "I have no freaking clue." So, Gigi, had you heard of her before she was there? And I guess we should, since we're saying everybody got on stage, we should give a little shout out to Jermaine Dupri because he was there in between a couple songs, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yes, there. And no, Donkey, the same question was uttered at my house as well. So, what does that say about us?
We are clearly not into R&B, or at least modern R&B. If you want to bring me back to the olden days, I'm down. But modern days, not so much about hearing all the hoochie coochie smacking whacking going on in that scene
heavens,
of music.
Yeah,
I had to find a way to keep it PG. Had to keep it PG. Okay.
There you go.
There is some Steelers stuff that went on. Do you want to talk about the waiver claim of Moon, inside linebacker who Baltimore didn't want, but seems like he has a decently athletic build? Or do you want to talk about the players that are no longer Pittsburgh Steelers who were technically under contract for this year?
Let's go with both, and we'll say with Moon, I'm not displeased with that pickup, especially if we can find any depth at the inside linebacker position. I'm all for that. It seems like we never have enough. So, yeah, sure, why not? And in regards to some Steelers that are no longer to be, I'm not. I mean, it's always sad to see a guy go, but it is a business, and I think there were good decisions made based on return in regards to the cap space saved.
There were great decisions made, and it's hard for Donkey to say that because everyone knows that I absolutely loved the fat punter, right? Mm-hmm. I'm not ashamed to say it. I love that draft pick. I don't know what the hell happened, but he went from kicking it like 50 yards every time he touched it in college to being a shankopotamus in the pros. I don't know if that was Pittsburgh changing what he did, if it's just, you get under the bright lights, things are a little different. I don't know. I don't care. But good riddance to Presley Harvin. There's some names I've been hearing around, and I'm going to be honest, I would like the Steelers to stop playing this good boy image and go out and get Matt Ariza, the punt god, because that dude was stellar in Buffalo. I know he got in trouble for alleged inappropriate sexual touching, we'll call it. But he got cleared of all those charges. The dude's not under any criminal prosecution. maybe potentially a huge upgrade for the Steelers and a guy to get his career and life back on the fast track.
That would be a huge upgrade for the Steelers' depth position based on what we've seen on the football field from him so far. Don't you have to replace the guy on the line, no? Chuck Okorafor?
Yeah.
Best of luck to you.
Unfortunately, we cut our second best tackle, which bothers me in a way. But let's be honest, Chuck Okorafor did not deserve the type of money he was making at $10 million this year. But I'm gonna be truthful with you here. Chuck Okorafor is better than Dan Moore Jr. Chuck Okorafor, though, went against the Steelers and talked bad on the coach staff being idiots. Don't do that. Don't do that. All right? Don't call out the fact that we play an offense of football that doesn't work. Don't call out the fact that we were playing games to lose. And if you don't believe that, look at the final drive in Buffalo where we're throwing checkdowns when we need to score twice. We're just letting the clock run out. This team doesn't play offensively to win. And Chuck Okorafor said something about it, lost his job. On the right side of him doing that, got a season worth of experience for Roger Jones, Gingy. But yeah, I'm a little sad to see Chuck's go. I think he always got a raw deal here. He wasn't a great run blocker, but by far probably the best pass blocker the Steelers had on this team outside of Isaac Seumalo. I don't know, I'm a little torn on that, but I agree just because of cap reasons. Chuck's had to go.
Yeah. What was the savings on that? Like
10 mil. Yeah, somewhere high in there. It depends on if they designate it post or pre-June 1st, right? And then, of course, the cut that came 1 year too late. Maybe the signing that never should have happened, I guess we could say. Mitchell Trubisky. Man. I got nothing nice to say about the dude because I'm not a Chicago fan. He never led my team to anything. He as a Pittsburgh Steeler, he's 2-7 in games where he played over half the game the Steelers were. And look at every other starting quarterback. Every other starting quarterback wins about 75% of the games as a Steeler. The only guy who didn't was Mitch Trubisky. You could argue Mitch Trubisky is the reason we had to go to Buffalo this year. You could argue Mitch Trubisky is the reason we missed the playoffs last year. I mean, seems like a well enough dude, but let's be honest here. The talent never lived up to the draft. And man, wouldn't you love to be Chicago right now if you drafted Patrick Mahomes instead of Mitchell Trubisky that year?
Oh, it's 2020 in all respects, Donkey. I don't think I can go far as back to say.
In all respects, who the hell even thought Mitch Trubisky was a first-round draft pick? Because that's what I said about him. I said, look at his stats at UNC. He sucks. He's a second, third rounder at best. You're taking him number 2 overall.
Yeah. Somebody clearly did, though, Donkey, and that hindsight 2020, right?
That someone currently is not the general manager of the Chicago Bears anymore.
Yeah, wouldn't say so, but that's a big hit for them, for sure, Donkey. But overall, giving Mitchell Trubisky a chance, I wasn't opposed to it, but definitely I'm with you on the year too long.
Now, Gingy, I got a question for you.
Was it pivotal games last year?
Right. Was it giving Mitchell Trubisky a chance, or was it guaranteeing Mitchell Trubisky a starting job? Because we talked about it his first year there. All reports were Mason Rudolph and Kenny Pickett both look better than Trubisky. But Trubisky got to be the starter from day one. So I wouldn't say a chance. I would say we guaranteed him a job he never deserved.
Okay, when there's always these backroom doors where people are made guarantees, I suppose, right? It's a recruiting technique when you're talking about high-level play. Right?
All right, I hear you.
Right?
This is a dude that got cut by his first team and was a backup the year before. I don't think you got to guarantee him nothing.
And that's exactly the point that I'm trying to make to you, Donkey, is, okay, this is not a guy that you guarantee anything to, right? You guarantee guys with proven track records, guys you're trying to attract to Pittsburgh, right? Which almost seems like a foreign concept to us now, right?
Yeah, I hear you fully on that. And I agree with you because I can't think of an elite Pittsburgh Steeler that's not named TJ Watt. Like, this used to be a spot where you had 3 4 elite players on both sides of the ball, and it just doesn't feel like there's elite play anywhere, and it feels like guys are just guaranteed stuff. You don't believe that? Look at Presley Harvin. Look at Mason Cole. It's like we are just guaranteeing things, and you can say what you want, but man, I haven't seen a former Steeler that is praising this team. And this is a team that just made the playoffs, went 10-7, right? But every former player who talks about this team, it ain't good.
No, you're right, Donkey. It's not. They're all citing culture, way, discipline, things of that nature too. It's fairly consistent across the board.
And we can't even agree on it in this team. You have guys like Cam Hayward and TJ Watt who are saying, no, things are good. And on the same side, you have guys like Najee Harris. You have guys formerly like Isaiah Buggs, like Cam Sutton, who are saying, no, it's not. I mean, if I was Cam Hayward, I would love the way things are going. I only have to practice once a week. I'm the second highest paid player on the team. Hell yeah, I'd love my job. But we need some culture change here. And I'm afraid with the hiring of Arthur Smith and all these other guys, and Zaggy, all those guys, I feel like we just brought in a lot of yes guys because we didn't bring in coordinators who were successful in their last stop. We brought in guys whose last stops were bad, right? The Jets wide receiving room was terrible last year, and they had elite talent in Wilson. You go out there, the Atlanta Falcons, bad last year. We were bringing in the guy from Carolina to have an interview. Like it feels like the Pittsburgh Steelers don't want talent. And it feels like that's the way of the roster construction, and that's the way of the coaching staff construction. I'm nervous. I'm optimistic because I told you I think Arthur Smith is going to make this offense better. But retaining all these guys we retained really makes me nervous.
I don't necessarily think it lends itself to big changes, Donkey.
No, and we were told things are going to be different. But then again, remember when we were promised big changes after week 3 this year, and the only change was Broderick Jones started because Dan Moore Jr. was hurt? You remember that? That's exactly what I feel like happening just in the offseason. Big changes! Except nothing changes.
That's what we're going to have to see. I hope that Artie Smith's able to do something with that offense. And I don't know, clearing up some cap space, maybe we're able to make a move personnel-wise. I don't think it really lies all with coaching or all with whatever, but we need to get a quarterback, Donkey. We need a quarterback, Donkey.
I don't, first off, I don't disagree with you. What Kenny Pickett showed last year, and by the way, I'm still a fan of Kenny Pickett. I still think he is a guy who can fit in the just the guy category. I'm not the guy who's going to say Kenny Pickett should be given the starting job. But let's be honest here, Gingy. The Steelers system, when was the last time we had a quarterback who had a good year? I think the Steelers are playing an antiquated way of football. And the reason you're seeing every quarterback who comes here struggle is because of the system. I'm not taking anything off of Kenny Pickett's play. He didn't play a good year. But to me, the one thing he showed this year, and it's one thing that I think you cannot underrate, is you have 2 minutes to go in a football game, Gingy. Do you trust Kenny Pickett with the football?
It's probably the only time I trust Kenny Pickett with the football.
That's exactly my point. He has that ability to go win a game, and I don't think that can be underrated. Because while everyone wants to talk about Justin Fields and how a great upgrade he would be, dude, just don't put on Justin Fields in the fourth quarter, okay? When the game's on the line, put on some Justin Fields tape, okay? Now, I was talking to my wife, and I said, you want to know how the Steelers become a contender? We trade for Justin Fields, and we become the first team. And she actually said this to me. She said it was like a baseball thing because I said Kenny Pickett for the fourth quarter. We do the first ever closer substitution in football. We let Justin Fields play for 3 quarters and Kenny Pickett play the fourth. All right? We get the best of both worlds. Because Justin Fields won't collapse and Kenny Pickett doesn't have to worry about a fast start. Like, he doesn't come in till the game's on the line. Like, I'm just saying, Justin Fields for a third-round draft pick, and we are the first ever two-quarterback system. What you think, Gingy?
Seems like cheating to me.
Cheating or not, I'm in love with it. And I know everyone wants to talk about, but look how good Mason was in his 3 games. And I love Mason Rudolph. I was the guy talking for him. But you're talking a guy, Gingy. Even when you look at Mason Rudolph's stats, they're suboptimal, right? I know he didn't turn the ball over. I know the completion percentage was great. But you're talking a guy who threw, what was it, like 290 in his first game, 274 in his second game, 152 in his third game, but only 3 touchdowns over 3 games. Like, no one succeeded in this Steelers system. And now we could argue none of those guys are good enough. But, Gingy, this is the question I'll pose to you because I think we need to bring in competition for Kenny Pickett. There's no doubt about it.
Yes.
But outside of Kirk Cousins, is there a guy who's like a guaranteed upgrade out there?
Guaranteed upgrade. Russell
If I'm going to take
question mark,
please now. I watched his last 2 years in Seattle and this year in Denver. The dude's numbers look good because he doesn't take risk, and then they look good because he puts up big stats in the fourth quarter when his team's down 3 touchdowns. Now, don't get me wrong, Russ on a vet contract, I wouldn't mind it as competition, but I don't think Russ takes a job that doesn't guarantee him the starting spot. And Jesus, if we haven't already learned about taking quarterbacks who other teams don't want and guaranteeing something. I want a guy who comes here with legit competition if it's not Kirk Cousins. And I'm not sure I want Kirk Cousins because I don't know if I trust Kirk Cousins winning a big game at this point. I think maybe the better choice is Jameis Winston, someone who's of par level, or even Ryan Tannehill, right? Let's talk that because let's talk that one, Gingy.
That's the real
that's
one.
The outlier in the space, right?
Yeah.
Arthur Smith guy has been there, has been successful in the system, probably doesn't have the talent he used to have. But let's take a guy who, worst case scenario is, a 20 to 30 quarterback, right? Not a you instantly have to bench him like Mitch Trubisky. Let's take a guy like Tannehill who's already shown he's willing to work with young quarterbacks. But more importantly, let's take a guy in Tannehill who's a veteran, who's been there, who's done that, right? Is Ryan Tannehill, if you're going to take an old guy over the hill, Tannehill I take before Russell Wilson, personally. Is Tannehill the type of guy you can fit in here and works well, or is Tannehill going to be a distraction because he's already an Arthur Smith guy? What is your feel on someone like Ryan Tannehill?
I think he's one of those guys that you could bring in as competition example, perhaps learning a new system for Kenny Pickett. If the Steelers are going to stay with Kenny Pickett, now I'm not saying that that's the way I would go, but you know what, Donkey, in reality, I think that's the way the Steelers are going to go. And I think that Ryan Tannehill would be an excellent complement, a heck of a lot better than backup than Mitchell Trubisky. And because of his knowledge of whatever pre-existing system may or may not exist with Artie Smith, probably better than Mason Rudolph for that role.
Yeah, and my understanding is Mason doesn't really want to be here, so Mason's probably off the board. So when we look at this tier of quarterbacks, Gingy, we have to be realistic. The Steelers are still, $5-6 million over the salary cap, and they still have to make room for the rookie class. There's a lot of money that needs to be made. So that probably means guys like Kirk Cousins are off the board, right? Because way too much money. You could bring in someone like a Justin Fields in a trade, but is Chicago really trading Justin Fields? You could bring in a low-end guy who, has been back up for a couple years and maybe has something left. To me, Jameis Winston's the name that comes to mind. Gardner Minshew's another guy on that tier. Jacoby Brissett type. But then are they really an upgrade? And how well are they in the quarterback room? You don't know. You could bring in Russell Wilson, but I don't think there's anything there. The only thing about Russ is he might be the cheapest option because Denver's already paying him $1 jillion. So all you would do is offset Denver's cap hit the more you give him. So maybe you get him on a vet minimum type of deal. But the real question to me comes down to this. Do the Steelers have difference makers that will make an average quarterback look good? Because we're not going to have an extraordinary quarterback. We're not going to have the draft capital to trade up to get Caleb Williams type of guy, someone like that. So do you take a guy like Tannehill? Let's say you take someone in the draft in the third or fourth round. Maybe Michael Penix falls down there. Maybe Bo Nix. Personally, I love the kid from Kansas. He's a little injured, but he's athletic, can throw the ball well. That's the guy that I really like, the kid from Kansas. Or do you take a flyer on one of these other failed guys? I know a name that you talked about, and I know that you've talked about liking from here before. Sam Darnold, for example. Zach Wilson from the Jets, because you know his time's there done. Do you see any of those type of options, which is more realistic for the Steelers, that interest you, Gingy?
As a backup or a starter now? What are we talking? Are you eliminating Kenny? Are you pushing Kenny Pickett out?
Kenny Pickett's going to be here, but there has to be a legit competition for the starting job, in my opinion. So you need someone to compete.
Someone who could back up, but could also really play like a journeyman starter role?
Yeah, like, let's say Gardner Minshew this season in Indy, right? He was in competition with the rookie. They thought the rookie was on par, so the rookie started, right? That same type of guy. A guy who, if he comes out and has a great camp, he wins the job. It's an actual competition. Kenny Pickett comes in, because I don't see, outside of Kirk Cousins, and I don't see us signing Kirk Cousins because of the money issue. Outside of Kirk Cousins, I don't see a guy who's better than Kenny Pickett, which means Kenny Pickett should be the not cemented starter, but the slotted in starter, right? And then you have to bring in a guy to push him. Do we bring in a guy who's more likely just to be the backup in a Tannehill? Or is there that tier that I just talked about, like the Zach Wilson, someone like that you think has a chance to push Kenny Pickett and maybe take the job? Is there anyone there who interests you?
I would probably go with more of the journeyman backup role, mentor role, if we're really going to continue, see what Kenny Pickett can thrive with this offensive coordinator. I'm probably looking at Tannehill, or I'm a big fan of Jacoby Brissett. I don't know if he's getting too long with it to be able to do it anymore, but
he played all right in Washington this year.
I would be for that, right?
All right, I hear you. So you're more of wanting to stick in that solid backup, not going to take the job type of guy, right? That's more of a Kenny Pickett loses the job than someone taking the job. Those type of guys.
Is
that a fair statement?
Donkey. And that's not necessarily by choice, but given our cap space, right? You're not going to get Kirk Cousins for $35 million.
Nah. You could probably get Zach Wilson at the end of that rookie contract. You could probably bring in Sam Darnold. Here's another name that maybe is out there. Former first-round pick, Trey Lance. I believe his contract's going to be done in Dallas. So Trey Lance will be on the market. Sam Darnold will be on the market. All of those type of guys will be the potential fringe starter type you could see come in here. Hell, maybe a Carson Wentz type of guy comes in. Maybe someone comes out and wows in the USFL, or USFL, that's not what it's called anymore. The merged XFL, USFL, which is the UFL. Maybe someone comes out and plays spring people. Hey, odd question, but let's just go there because we're talking it. Should Mitch Trubisky play in the UFL and try to show he still got it, Gingy?
Absolutely. Do you think someone's going to pursue him in the NFL?
No. Not for anything more than a vet minimum, but I tell you right now, he goes to the UFL and balls out, he might be backup.
Yeah, that's what I'd say. I think that's his real shot at the league right now,
So none of these failed first-round picks entice you enough, Gingy, to want to take one of the younger type of guys out there? No Jameis Winston, no Zach Wilson, no Sam Darnold, no Trey Lance.
His names scare me, Donkey. I don't know. Sam Darnold, maybe. I don't think it's Zach Wilson.
I still wanted Jameis Winston and Byron Leftwich and watch us throw 50 touchdowns and 40 interceptions in a season. That's still what I wanted. I'm sad.
Nobody wants that but you, Donkey.
That'd be exciting football, dude. We'd be like either winning or losing, but there'd be 40 points on both sides of the scoreboard every week.
It's true. That's true.
That would be a little fun. Now, Gingy, we talked about the quarterback, and clearly the offensive line is still the biggest problem on the offense. Do you think, because of all this talk about who the Steelers are going to be interested in, how the Steelers are the odds-on favorite to land every one of these quarterbacks, do you think the defense is getting overlooked? And we're not talking about maybe one of the major problems on this team because we're so focused on there's no Ben Roethlisberger anymore.
Oh, like the exact same thing that I said last offseason is that we had the weakest secondary that I've seen in quite some time. You mean that problem?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, well, is that the problem you were going to identify, or do you have
arguably
one,
no?
Donkey?
Nope. I think we might have the weakest offensive or defensive line I've ever seen in Pittsburgh.
Yep. So you have another problem. Okay, that's not good, Donkey. Where we all have different problems.
And we both avoided the glaring black hole of middle linebacker, Jimmy.
Yeah. We don't have anything at any level. Good.
We have no. Stop it.
Thrown in rumors of Fletcher calls. Yeah. That's
we
how
have
you solve this problem. Well,
we have TJ Watt. Okay.
We do.
To be honest with
you, and he produces. He produces, Donkey.
He
like enough for the whole unit.
Sometimes it's true.
Sometimes for real.
And we also have the PFF darling Alex Highsmith. They rated Alex Highsmith as good as TJ Watt this year. I don't know what fucking football team they were watching, but your whole website deserves to be shut down when you tell me Alex Highsmith is good as TJ Watt. That's all I have to say.
I understand what you're saying, Donkey. You can't take all them stats too seriously, though. But to be honest with you, when you have
elected defensive player of the year, just putting it out there.
Okay, so there are one or two units in the NFL that are really able to have elite pass rushers on both sides or on both ends, right? And can really afford to do that. What other team has like elite level pass rushers on both ends?
San Francisco, right?
Niners. Yep, that's the obvious one.
Baltimore for sure.
Who do they got? What is it, like Patrick Queen and Roquan Smith?
That's their middle linebackers. Outside, oh my gosh, why can't I think of his name now? But they had two guys who were really studs in OA. Clowney played out there.
You're not convincing me on that one. Okay.
I can't think of the big guy on the line there. Hey, Jadeveon Clowney is still, to this day, one of the best run-stopping defensive ends out there. And he does a good job at rushing the passer.
I'm with you on Sam Fran. Who else?
I have to go look at stats real quick, but I mean, when you're talking...
Okay, so Alex Highsmith, clearly B-level?
I said this when we talked about him. We pay top 15 money for a guy who sits in that 30 to 50 range. Yeah. And when you think 30 to 50 range, that's not a bad pass rusher, right? That is a number 2 pass rusher.
Or we paid 15 mil?
It's like 18 mil or 15, 18 mil a year, which puts him as the 15th highest paid edge rusher per season.
Okay.
Like, he's on par. Now, Danielle Hunter's about to get a lot of freaking money, right? But he's making as much money as Danielle Hunter, right? He doesn't produce like Danielle Hunter, I'll tell you that right now. I think he's making more money than Max. No, I think Max Crosby's extension was slightly higher than that. I think Max was about 22 a year. So not quite Max Crosby. So somewhere between Max Crosby and Danielle Hunter is where his money falls, and the dude just doesn't produce that level.
I hear you.
And let's be honest here, neither one of those guys are playing opposite TJ Watt.
So you want to see more from Highsmith?
You have to see more from Highsmith. You have to see more from Cam Hayward. You have to see more from Larry Ogunjobi, or you need to cut his butt. This is what makes me so upset, Gingy. So PFF loves Alex Highsmith, right? They rated him as good as TJ Watt. But when you look at the pressure rate in terms of quarterbacks, hits, sacks, and drawing holding penalties, both Marcus Golden and Nate Herbig, or Nick Herbig, I don't ever remember which one's which. Baby Herbig and Marcus Golden had as good or better success rates when you look at actual quarterback hits as the minimum stat instead of this made up pressure number. They both had as good win rates as Alex Highsmith. That's where my problem is he didn't outperform the backups this year. That's not good enough. That is not good enough. And when we talk about the Steelers, we talk about the highest paid defense in the league. We talk about the second highest salary team in the league, which is why we have to do so many moves to get cap compliant. That defense, while they weren't the biggest issue, that doesn't mean they're not an issue, right?
Liability, especially in some areas, more than others, Donkey. We are nitpicking right now because
are we going to keep Pat Pete for $11 million?
No, we better not. That's the big problem right there. There's money being used up on talent that when that money was getting paid to it, absolutely, but based on production last 2 years. Are we
going to pay $10 million for Larry Ogunjobi? Are we going to take a $23 million cap hit on Cam Hayward?
Cam Hayward is really the one that's... $10 million Ogunjobi, I'm really not that upset. Not as upset as you are about it, Donkey, but I understand why. But that's debatable. But the $23 million on Cam Hayward, our Walter Payton Man of the Year, absolutely love and respect. But $23 million, oof, that's a hit.
I love Cam too, but Cam is more of a rotational end at this point of his career. He's more of that $6-7 million, and I understand some of it's signing bonus. I think it's like 15 or 18 million base salary, though. Dude, that needs to be cut in half. I'm not going to lie. That needs to be cut in half, or the Steelers need to go to old school Steelers way and be cutthroat and say we're done with you. Like, I say this every time, man. If Troy Polamalu played on this Steelers iteration, he would have played 5 more years because the Steelers would have never told him he's done. Like, this team just doesn't have that cutthroat feel to them. I don't know what it is. I don't know what's lacking. But, Kenji, I feel like improvements need to be made, and I think we're so focused on the quarterback, we're ignoring the elephants in the room, which to me, the two biggest holes are that defense as a whole. That defense as a whole. Outside of TJ Watt, I don't give a shit. Improve. And that offensive line, man, it's not good enough. People are telling me, you can run it back with Daniels and Moore. All you have to do is upgrade center. Bro, if Dan Moore starts at left tackle next year, just go ahead and hit me in the head and wake me up when February ends so I don't have to watch the damn season, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Dan Moore's been a thorn in my side for quite some time.
Since he was a rookie?
Yeah. Yeah, since then, Donkey.
And I mean, we're going into next year right now with Pat Pete looking like a starter again. And from what I'm hearing from Tomlin is he's really excited to see the mentorship continue. All right, I got it. Mentorship continue. Cool. Cut his ass and sign him to be the new safeties coach. Because don't we have an opening there? My God. A mentor should not be an $11 million player. A mentor should be like a $2 million vet minimum, right? Yeah. We're out here paying $11 million for mentorship. And excuse me, but which quarterback performed well last year outside of Joey Porter Jr.? What secondary player performed well outside of Joey Porter Jr. and Trenton Thompson? But he only got a game and a half before he hurt himself. Gingy, there's a wall. I want to put my head through it because this team is so far from being competitive. And the hard part is, and maybe you see one, and I'll let you talk to me if you do, I don't see the route how we get there in just a year.
I think, and no, Donkey, you are right. It is disappointing, but there needs to be improvements on both sides of the ball. I think you can improve one or the other per year, maximum, right? And that's if you land all your shots. But to improve both, where have they done that at?
I don't know. Kevin Colbert screwed this team. His last 5 draft classes sucked balls, man. I mean, DeMarvin Leal in the 3rd round. Firemuth in the 2nd round has never been a 2nd round talent in tight end. You don't believe that? Look at Matt LaForta's rookie season in Detroit and tell me when Firemuth ever looked like that. You have all of these guys that were high picks that never performed like high picks. Najee Harris is another name that comes to mind. Kenny Pickett is a name that comes to mind. Like, maybe this year we might have hit it, but you look at Colbert's last 5 drafts, and I think that's where the Steelers' problem lies, is you never have these young guys to take over, so now we're overpaying for vets that other teams don't want. Because at the end of the day, Gingy, do you ever let a player on your team that you want to keep get to free agency?
No.
Exactly. So if you're
pay him.
building off of free agents and veteran free agents, you know what that tells me? You're building a team from the scrap heap. This Steelers team needs to get back to drafting the trenches and drafting the trenches well. Because we have drafted trenches players, but they sucked. See Kendrick Green. See Dan Moore Jr. Actually, we drafted a good one in Kevin Dodson, and we screwed it up. The 2nd best rated guard by PFF. Right now, everyone's saying the 20th best free agent in football is a guy the Steelers got rid of for nothing because we decided to switch his natural position, and he looked like dog food playing next to Dan Moore Jr., which, well, as we all know now, maybe it wasn't Dotson who was the problem. So, Gingy, I want to know right now, because you're always the guy, black and gold. Sunglasses make everything, well, I don't want to say rose tinted. Make everything dark tinted, because black and gold would both kind of be dark. Everything's dark. Gingy brings the light from the darkness, right? How does this team get competitive this year? Now, I'm not talking playoffs. I'm talking how do we get to that Baltimore, Buffalo, Kansas City level?
What I'm talking about, Donkey, is you need a quarterback. And if you find one and land one in the offseason, great. And if you don't, then you're not going to make that type of jump. Maybe you make that type of, I don't know, maybe a different type of jump, right? Maybe you win a playoff game. Maybe you get a home playoff game. I don't know, Donkey. But again, improving on both sides of the ball on the offseason is going to be difficult this year, Donkey. We got we got a 1st round pick at number 20. Right?
Mm-hmm.
I haven't done my research yet, but I don't think you're going to land a top end anything like a tackle or whatever at 20. I'm not certain.
You could probably get the best center in the draft, but then you're probably overdrafting him.
Right. So maybe there's some work to be done there. I still think there's opportunity to clear some cap if Patrick Peterson does not restructure. My goodness, Donkey. I don't know. That's gonna be a problem. And yeah, it's time to get cutthroat. I'll tell you what. You want to talk about a general theme? That's the team that you need to get to Kansas City, Buffalo, Baltimore, right? Steelers got to
let Tyreek Hill walk when he costs too much. Is that what you're telling me?
Yep, gotta be cutthroat, Donkey. I don't know exactly what those moves are yet, but that's what's going to happen.
I'll tell you the first one. Deontay Johnson's getting shipped off for a 4th round draft pick.
There's one. Yep.
Najee Harris is getting
number 1.
Najee Harris is
getting
a
dysfunctional offense
for a 3rd round draft pick.
If you want a dysfunctional offense, center it around a dysfunctional number 1 wide receiver.
And I'm going to tell you one that's going to be very unpopular in Steelers land. George Pickens gets moved for a number 2, and I signed T. Higgins to a 3-year, $6 million contract.
I'm not opposed to that. Pickens does well on the big plays, but I need a guy in that role who's going to be consistent. You know what? You want to talk about a guy who's developed
committed all in.
You want to talk about a guy who developed in the AFC? I had questions about Michael Pittman Jr. in Indianapolis. Talk about a tough, every down team wide receiver. Doesn't cry when he doesn't get the ball. Doesn't cry when he has to block on a run play. like solid guy. So yeah, while we might miss the all-star athletic ability of George Pickens, ultimately, if we need a culture change in Pittsburgh, getting rid of him would produce a culture change, I think.
Mm-hmm. I know this isn't the popular sentiment because the Steelers win football games. We went 10-7. We weren't that far away. Dude, watch that Bills game. We were light years away from being competitive. This is a team that at one point lost back-to-back games to New England and Arizona because we lost Kenny Pickett. And we both talk about how Kenny Pickett either needs to upgrade himself or needs to be upgraded from. So you're telling me we lost a below-average player and the team fell to shit? Bro, fire sale. I'm telling you right now, I'm not sure how many starters would be back on my team because I would trade Freiermuth. I would trade Deontay Johnson. I would trade Najee Harris. I would trade, we just talked about him, George Pickens. The only players that would have a job next year on that offense guaranteed is Jalen Warren, Broderick Jones, and Isaac Seumalo. Everybody else, if you call for me, you offer me fair market value, which is probably a third-round pick for everybody I named, I trade them. Every single one of them in a heartbeat.
We might be there, Donkey. We might be there, Donkey. That's what I said. We might be there.
I would hope so. I don't know if my first-round pick would be Vontez Sweat because we haven't been able to stop the run since frickin' Casey Hampton was in the middle. So let's go take a hunk of a cow out of Texas. Just saying.
Not opposed to that. In the modern-day NFL, though, Donkey, what are you going to need here?
Offensive, defensive line. Here, I'm going to tell you.
Pass rushers and quarterbacks.
There's a model to win. There's a model to win without it, and it's San Francisco. Yes, they had a good defensive line, and yes, they had a great offensive line. But don't come telling me they had the quarterback. Like Brock Purdy's a good quarterback. I talked about this before, but he ain't on that level.
They had a quarterback, Donkey, and you didn't have to pay him, right?
Right. But remember,
Brock Purdy is a lot
more
valuable on a rookie deal than he is as a real free market quarterback. You see what I'm saying, Donkey?
Yeah, for sure.
Once he's a free market quarterback, maybe not so, but a rookie deal quarterback, absolutely. Give him to me, Donkey. No question.
Did you see a big difference between him and Jimmy Garoppolo?
No, but you paid Jimmy Garoppolo $25 million.
Exactly, I hear you on that. But what I'm saying is, there is a system where you can do it without the guy at quarterback, right?
Where are they doing that at then?
San Fran. I just said it. You could throw almost anyone in that system, and they're going to go do it.
I don't. Yeah, take a look at the rest of that roster around them. Stacked.
They're stacked. All the positions? That's what you have to do. You have to stack your roster around him, and that's what I'm saying. And that's where I think the Steelers lack because Gingy, you look at San Francisco, they had 2 top 20 wide receivers, a top 10 tight end, a top 10 running back, offensive linemen, all probably placed in the top 10 in their respective positions outside of left guard. You look at the defensive line, same thing, into the linebackers. Now, their secondary was weak. The only 2 spots I don't think they had, and honestly, I even said Brock Purdy was a top 10, so they had a top 10 in the quarterback. But this is the thing. Their secondary wasn't very good, but they were top 10 everywhere else and were strong. What I'm saying, and this is what I do as the Steelers, I blow this thing up because outside of maybe George Pickens, I don't think you have a top 10 guy at a position or a top 20 in wide receiver since you start 2. I think George Pickens maybe could push into that, but outside of that, Gingy, and TJ Watt, obviously, is there another guy who's at that top tier level that the Steelers have?
No.
So then why are we keeping these guys? I understand we want to have a winning season, but if we don't have that talent, doesn't it make more sense to just blow this baby up and see if maybe we can pull off an instant rebuild? Like Houston pulled off an instant rebuild by nailing a draft class, right? Tank Dell in the 4th round. Their first 2 picks were studs. Do the Steelers have the ability to maybe blow this thing up? And maybe if Caleb Williams is that guy, blow this thing up, get the draft capital, go up, get Caleb Williams, get a left or right tackle also in the 1st round, and just say, hey, we're going to do the Houston thing. We're going to hope we hit on a fourth rounder, but we're going to nail these first two picks and get two absolute corner pieces for this franchise.
I hope so, Donkey, because it seems like that's the way you're going to win nowadays, is getting that cornerstone franchise guy. You have to have one. I know you're talking about building a system around one without it, but really, come on, let's talk about all them quarterbacks you named before. Allen, Mahomes, Jackson, Goff. Those guys, those are winners.
Remember that Goff is a guy that got given up on.
He did, but to be quite honest, he's a guy that got actually developed. In today's NFL, I think there are a lot of guys that get given up on, but they just don't have time.
You nailed it. But who the hell do the Steelers have on this staff to develop a quarterback?
There you go. That's questionable. That's
exactly. Instead of getting a guy who has a track record of developing a quarterback as either the quarterback's coach or the OC, we hire two guys who fail. Two guys who showed.
That's it. Fail.
Did Arthur Smith develop the quarterbacks down there?
Tannehill?
Tannehill's a good quarterback. Tannehill's a good quarterback before he went there. Remember, outside of getting
great in Miami. Yeah, he looked really stellar on tape in Miami, didn't he?
You take out that injury where he had that last year in Miami. And let me pull it up real quick because we talked about these stats before, and I talked about them last week. Yes, he had his two best seasons there. I'm not going to argue. But don't forget, he only got to play because of the failed development of, oh my God, what was that kid's name from Oregon? Starter there. I talked about the Steelers should pick him up 1 year as a backup. Why can't I think of what his name is? Marcus Mariota. Don't forget, he only got in there because Mariota couldn't do anything under Arthur Smith. And then Arthur Smith goes to Atlanta, has a couple young quarterbacks, and just leave it. But don't forget, the year before his injury in Miami, Tannehill threw for what? 4,000 yards, 24 touchdowns, and 12 interceptions before his first injury that made him a little sus the last 2 years in Miami because he played injured for the end of those seasons, so the stats don't look that good. But don't forget, that is a guy who his two biggest passing yards came in Miami. He had back-to-back 4,000-yard passing seasons in Miami. So I understand Tannehill played better in the Arthur Smith system, but let's not act like Tannehill hadn't put good tape out there before.
I hear you, Donkey. I hear you.
Like, I get everyone wants to forget what Tannehill did in Miami for proper reasons, but Tannehill was a guy who's had success before. I mean, the winning wasn't there, but those Miami teams were trash. Okay, that's a nice way to say it. Whatever the heck was going on there was dysfunction. They were very... That team since Dan Marino has not been very good, is a fair assessment, I guess. Is the way to put it.
Yeah, to say the least, Donkey.
But, yeah, I don't know. I feel like the Steelers, you're here talking about how you need a quarterback to win in this thing, and the Steelers seem to be afraid to let the quarterback throw. It seems like we're trying to build a team that's going to win without the quarterback, which is why I say we need to just blow it up and get elite talent because we're trying to beat Tennessee 3 years ago where the quarterback play just has to be good enough. But remember that Tennessee team for 3 years, or those 3-4 years ago, had guys like Jonnu Smith, had A.J. Brown, had that other explosive dude, Corey Davis, maybe on the other side, who had a great year that year, had, I don't know, King Henry running the ball, had a left tackle who was Pro Bowler every year, had a center who was out of his mind, and had one of the best defensive lines to go along with it, which set him up in good space all the time. I just feel the Steelers are a long way from that, and I feel the Steelers don't think they're a long way from that, and I feel we're going to retread, sign some bets, and we're going to be the third or fourth best team in the AFC North, PG.
We shall see, Donkey. It'll be a long off season, and much time to ponder all this until draft day.
True that. We'll go, like I said, we'll go over some quarterbacks, the fun stuff next week. Maybe we'll do some player ratings if last year's everyone's back. I don't know who's going to be here. But Gingy, a final NFL season shout out from you. Unless there's something else you want to talk about, in which case, bring it up now.
I don't have anything else on mind. Yeah, shout out to football. I'm gonna miss it. I know we always do in the off season, but lots to hope for.
No, wrong thing. I said it wrong again.
Take a look
UFL.
at. Lots to hope for. Let's hope for an active off season. I know we have cap problems, but again, that whole cleaning house discussion that we had was pretty fun. It's pretty fun, Donkey.
The best part is we talked about trading all these guys, and none of them would help us in the cap situation.
It sucks. Yeah, it sucks. But trades though, right? Depends on what you're able to get for them, market value and whatnot. Deontay Johnson, we got a second rounder for Chase Claypool. We ought to be able to get that for Deontay Johnson. I'd take it.
Yeah, he's probably worth a second rounder. I mean, that's what DJ Moore got, and really, he's on par with what DJ Moore is, right? Essentially.
I'd take it.
I'd take it too, just because I think something new needs to change in this spot. My last shout out of the year has to go Kansas City Chiefs. Way to do it, Patty Mahomes. Way to be that guy. Like one more win, and I guess I take Baby Goat out of it and just call you the Goat. And of course, last year's Gingy, Bugaboo, all the people who came and helped during the show, during the regular season. We're about to get nonsensical, Gingy. It's going to be fun. I am the Viking Donkey. That's Viking _Donkey at Twitch and Twitter. Your daily dose of Donkey Ginger is the YouTube channel where you get all this fun content. Leave us a like, follow, hit the little subscribe notification bell thing so you know when we put up new stuff. Because in the off season, who knows what the hell's going to happen? Gingy, season's over. Sign on out.
Mutant Gingy, season's over. Nonsensical. Here we go, Steelers.